high performance to me, a big thing what I coach, I mean, I'm a big fan of routine. I mean, the walk-in routine, I can teach it to brand new beginners. Like they may not even be able to form a golf swing, but they'll certainly look like they know what they're doing until they move the golf club. You know what I mean? So they'll masquerade as a golfer pretty quickly, which I'm a fan of, because that whole moment of, walking into the shot and putting your hands on and waggling and, to me, there's a lot of mental peace in the ability for somebody to do that. And it takes a commitment too, right? And so I'm a big fan of teaching that move to, whatever golfer it is. Now, the golfers that you coach, Donald, obviously they've probably got, whether they know it or not, they've got it's an interesting story for you too. They've got a pattern on how they walk into a shot. You being a high performance coach, you'll probably look at it sometimes in certain situations and go, that was interesting. The way they, that shot wasn't exactly desirable, and that wasn't what they normally do. Sure. Right. There's Scott Fawcett is, you guys know Decade Golf.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. So Scott sent me this video. It was pretty cool. It was Tiger Woods in 2000 versus Tiger Woods in 2018. In 2000 at Pebble Beach, he would take his little practice swings, and they weren't full ones. Then he would hold the club in his left hand, rest it on the ground, stand behind the ball, take a breath, walk in. As he walked in, he'd put his hand on, he'd look, he'd waggle, he'd look, he'd waggle, he'd fire. And then you flash forward to the videos that Scott showed at Bellerive in St. Louis for the PGA Championship. Brooks Koepka won that one, and Tiger hit it all over the golf course that day and almost won the tournament. Brooks hit it pretty good, and Tiger hit it off the tee every which way, but had this amazing ability to score and get the ball in the hole. But the interesting thing was in 2018, and this happened before because I just found out, but he would take his practice swings. They looked nothing like the practice swings he took at Pebble. At Pebble, they were kind of 3/4-ish things. At Bellerive, they were kind of long and really hingy. The club went beyond parallel. It was kind of weird. And then he'd take the club out, whap it on the ground. He'd put the club in his right hand, walk up to the ball, and then put his left hand on. And I don't know Tiger. I would love to call him and go, hey, man, what was there a thought in the change in routine? Because the 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach, he won by 15. It was something crazy, at Bellerive, he played great, but it's, he hit it. He didn't hit it like, if he would have drove it a little bit better, he probably would have beat Brooks.
It's interesting. I was at the Masters. Funny enough, the Masters this time last year. The year one, I was there with one of the girls. She was playing in the women's national, and I stayed on for the Monday practice round. And I watched. The only reason I stayed was just to see a little bit of Tiger's practicing, because I hadn't seen him in maybe like 7 years. One of the things that really stood out to me was how much in rhythm he moves. Like everything he does is in the way he takes a ball and he puts it in. Everything was in rhythm. And the other thing that really struck me was every single shot he hit, he watched it to completion. Like not once did he hit a shot where like it's mid-flight and he's back and he's pulling another ball. You know what I mean? And it's so striking when you see it compared to what even like say a lot of the good players that I might work with is the consistency of what he does and the rhythm of how he moves is unbelievable. Like, and you don't see that. I don't know. I haven't seen that in many players, that level of rhythm and time, and to not just like his swing, but all the movements surrounding it. Even on the range, taking a ball off Joe, it was just like it was phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, I watched him at the Open there last year. Donald, he didn't play well at all. Apparently he was struggling with an injury, whatever it may be. But I noticed that as well. No matter how poor he hit it, he never seemed to speed up. You look at him, you wouldn't know if he was 6 under or 6 over. I think at the time I was watching him, he was 4 or 5 over. and he was he's still hitting a shot like he knew he had a chance to win. It was strange looking at him. I was like, he's like 5 over par. I was checking the score, and he was walking around as if he was in contention. I thought that was great to see. Even though in his head he mightn't have believed, he still showed to me it looked like he was ready to win, and I thought that was brilliant. He didn't know. You know, a lot of players you can tell, you get a little quick, they might slow down, whatever they may be. They show mannerisms that they're playing poorly. He did not show it at all. I thought it was fantastic.
I'd be interested to hear Martin's take on this. Martin, you know the way, so like you said that you introduced the routine early with some of your like beginner golfers and stuff like that. How do they take that? Do they think like, really, you want me to start doing a routine? I can't even like get the ball off the ground, or what kind of an attitude do they carry into that kind of thing?
Well, you know, what's kind of funny is that so I'm 51 years old now, right? And
Looking well for 50, by the way, Martin. You look great.
Yes. Facts. Yeah.
So, you know, and it's one of those things now, the older I get, the grumpier I can be, and people are okay with it. And when I say grumpy, it's not grumpy, but it's just I can get folks to do things that I had a harder time getting them to do when I was 28 or 30.
Sure.
And so they come to my golf school. They come on a vacation to go do a 3-day camp in Phoenix. Typically, I do summer camps different places, right? Did one at Portrush, so that was fun. But when the folks come to these golf schools, they're coming for an experience, and make them write down what they want to get better at, right? And naturally, everybody writes down consistency, which is hysterical. So they write down consistency. So right when they have that, when they say that or they have that, I know I have them. Like I have them, you know what I mean? Because they don't understand, like to your point about Tiger, Scott Fawcett called it his walking meditation. He goes on to say that Tiger literally is, in this sense of walking meditation when he plays golf. And it's a great way of saying it. And my mentor, George Newton, was the same way. Okay. Everything, Ben Hogan was the same way. Jack Nicklaus was the same way. So if you precede technique with the idea of routine on, okay, selection, maybe a little half practice swing, a breath, a walk-in move, a certain waggle, and then maybe you don't know how to move the club, fine. But at least, that precedes a lot of great things. And now when you put it to somebody that way, they're like, all right, fine, I'll do it. And then they start to get it. We call it the rule of one, meaning they get one ball goes on the grass, the balls stay back in the bucket or behind their, striking area. And then they put one ball in place and they walk up and they have to do this routine, hit a ball. And your point about watching the ball roll to completion, okay? My coach George used to make us do the same thing. We'd hit a shot, we'd have to stand there, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. Maybe if you're really matched 5, 1,000, okay? And then he said, then you could show displeasure, or if you were happy, fine. He said, but there was no, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And no quick lookaways. And it's funny when you're that commitment to just that part, routine, walk in, watch a ball until it settles. That's a huge thing that if you have that patience, you're going to be a pretty damn good golfer. 100%. You really will. Yeah. Stuff's going to connect in the middle way faster than the person that is just saying, okay, the reward is, that sense of a good shot, because that sense of, okay, hit it, oh, then I'll pose. Now look at me. You know what I mean? So it's chicken or the egg. And I think that if people are more into the idea of choosing a shot, the one solid breath, the correct walking routine, putting their hands on a little waggle, look, settle, hit it, watch it. Okay. Then you can curse, or then you can say, hey, did you see that one? Right. I think that's a huge deal. So people take it okay.
I'm a big believer in like pattern recognition and mental maps and stuff like that. And one of the things by watching the ball to completion that I'm a firm believer in is that at some stage, even if it's not the shape you desired in that moment, you might need that shape. Like you might, like, let's say you hit a 30-yard cut. There might come a time when you actually need to play a 30-yard cut. And if you felt what it felt like, what happened at impact, and you've seen that flight come, you have a far better chance of recreating that when you need it than if you just hit it. Fuck, do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I
Yeah.
think there's definitely there's a piece to it that helps the player develop that creativity and ability that's just beyond the discipline of watching it to the end.
Sure. No, it makes good sense. It makes good
Martin,
sense. Yeah.
Martin, with the routine you were saying there, do you find it's very hard for a player to stick to a routine? I find I'm very guilty of it myself. But when you're trying to show a player what their correct routine might be, or you may let them pick, does that go back to you maybe recording their routine for a good shot they hit and trying to get them to repeat that routine? Or how do you get them to settle on one routine to make them comfortable over the shot?
So to me, the routine pattern, there's two of them. There's stuff that's outside, let's say 60 yards, depending on the golfer, to the tee box. Okay. And then there's stuff closer to the green. The routine that is like more full swing based would be, like you'd watch most good players. Say, for example, you teed it up on a 150-yard par 3. You tee it up. You'd step back. You'd maybe make this swing that you might need that feeling for over the ball, whether it's straightish, fade, draw, whatever that feel might be. Then there's a sense of a breath, and then a walk in, a looks and go. And that routine doesn't really change much. The way I teach it pretty much the same way. Somebody might take on their own little nuance of it. Around the green, though, my preference is that you do, instead of doing your practice swings behind the ball, and I'm a big fan of, if the target's the iPad, that all the practice swings are toward the target. So when they kind of look up, they make a connection to the target. I see people make practice swings that are kind of perpendicular to the target line. I'm not a fan of that. So I like practice swings to be parallel to the line. So when they let the club, wave about them, and I try to not let them touch the ground either, which is funny too. It's another funny story, but with a driver, it's so fun. I see these amateur golfers take their driver out of the bag, take the head cover off, take a practice swing that goes onto the ground with their driver, right? And then I'll ask them, I go, are you supposed to hit the ground with your driver? And they'll look at me quizzically and they go, no. I'll go, all right, well then why does your practice swing thwap the ground every time you take a practice swing with your driver? And they'll look at me, huh, interesting. I go, yeah, let's swing it this high above the ground, make a whoosh. Because I said, the only thing you're trying to do with your driver is literally bend the tee over a little bit and, get the ball. So that's interesting for them, right? Because they're all in this mindset that if they can measure and go and brush the ground twice, clip daisies, I always call it, then they're going to have some modicum of success when they walk up to the ball. I always tell them, no, let's build a bit of a triangle of arms, and let's swing the club, 6-8 inches above the ground, maybe a foot above the ground. Feel the heaviness of the radius kind of maximize you. And then when you go to a golf ball, we're just going to bend that over a little bit. And then we'll let a freer radius kind of collect the ball, rather than the idea of clipping daisies with your head down and walking up to a ball. And then, like I was saying, by the green, the reason I'm a fan of practice swings by the green is just those are slower swing speeds, and you need to kind of feel how the club's going to react to the ground the ball is sitting on, whether the ball is in some, a bird's nest, or whether the ball is on a tight line, you're using to bounce a little bit. So, I basically teach two routines, a short game routine and a full swing routine. And full swing might be half swing, but it's the same full swing area.
Brilliant. You made getting into posture sound ridiculously easy.
What's that?
You made getting into posture sound ridiculously easy. With just holding the radius of the club and just a slight bend over at address.
It's I would say that probably 9 out of 10 golfers get way too close to a golf ball. They come in and they walk in and they just kind of plump their feet down, thinking that they visualize this area where their feet should go, rather than kind of creating this triangle with their club in their, and then kind of leaning into it a little bit, and then organizing their feet and maybe settling to it, right? So I try to show them that, like, before they even start playing golf. I'm a big fan of the grip, You know, I mean, I hate the interlocking grip. I don't hate it as when somebody knows how to do it correctly. I hate it when Uncle Al shows who's the 15 handicapper, and now this right hand's on here like this, right? They don't. It's one thing to do it right, and it's another thing to get it like way under, then your right hand's on or your trail hand's on, all jacked up forever. You know, and they think that some kind of interlock is this magic when it, you know, doesn't mean much other than taking a thumb off of, a squeezy index finger off of the lead hand. It's really all it does.
I think Jack, Tiger, and Rory are three of the best players to interlock. Not many others do it. Am I correct in saying that?
You know, I mean, like again, like when you know how to do it, like obviously Michael Bannon, right? You know, it's when you have a nice pair of hands on a golf club and it's not like this.
Yeah.
You know, when you have an interlock that's too deep, it's really hard to get your, hand on properly, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so you get it like right from the get-go. I mean, if you have a good teacher and the teacher, wants you to interlock your fingers, that's fine. But that teacher is going to pay a bit more attention to, how this bit works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so interlocking, I like interlocking, but again, I think you need a teacher to teach it, because the benefit of an interlock is that this finger can't squeeze too hard, because if it did, all you're going to do is squeeze your pinky to death, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it creates a softness in the hands, which I'm a fan of. But, again, people go too deep, and all of a sudden, as a coach, these people come to me for golf school vacations, and they're lovely people. They're usually between 50 years old and 80 years old. They play golf for, some are brand new, some have played golf for 30 years, and they come to me with this grip that is holding them back from the variety of ways good hands can articulate the golf club, right? So they're in a manner that takes away some of their speed, some of their control. And I'll say to them, I'll go, if all you've done is paid me for 3 days of teaching you how to grip the club properly, and you leave and you really can grip it properly, that's a massive win. Because if you can get the hands in nicely, you feel the weight of the club better. You can use the club a variety of ways around the green better, not just, just for energizing a full swing. So it's, I'm a big fan of getting the hands on nicely.
Is there a reason, Martin, like obviously you've done like an amazing job over the course of your career to develop these unbelievable training aids that are used by some of the best players all over the world, and every level of player all over the world. Is there a reason that you find yourself working with these kind of players that come to your golf schools? Was that a choice that you made, or was that just an organic thing that you moved into doing golf schools and those were the kind of people that came along? Or I'd be just interested to hear how you ended up developing that clientele.
Well, you know what? I used to think that teaching was a hard way to make a living, and I really do. I think it's a hard way to make a living. I played college golf. I was an okay college player. I got my Canadian Tour card pretty quick. I played for a few years as a player. I wasn't very good. I was good enough to kind of play out there a little bit. I had a bit of talent. And then all of a sudden I got offered this director of golf job, and I grew up in an era where there wasn't really a full-time teaching pro. Like there wasn't a guy who just taught full-time. I shouldn't say that. Ledbetter was around when I was a teenager, and I used to look at it like, okay, a successful job in the golf business is either you play and you make a living, or you run the whole facility and you get paid a salary and you teach. And you know what I mean? So you get to run the place and you get to do lessons, and it seemed like an inclusive deal, right? So when I was about 26, this fella offered me a job. It was a nice director of golf job in Palm Desert. I wasn't expecting the job. I was actually going to go play another season on the Canadian Tour. And I thought to myself, wow, this is a pretty cool opportunity. The salary is really good. I can teach. I can still play golf in PGA section events. And, the summers, I basically had the summer off because it was down in Palm Desert, California, where it was hot as, 110 degrees in summer, everybody left. So I took the job and I enjoyed it. And it gave me the security of a, salary, and I still taught and everything. But the full-time teaching job, thought, man, I don't know if I could ever do that because, I'm trying to have these clients and, you're just trading time for money and it's a tough business. So, you'd mentioned training aid stuff. So when I'd always been a tinker with training aids, even when I was like 30 years ago, I had this idea for a product and I went down the road of maybe, seeing if I could do it. I just kind of ran out of, I didn't know, I didn't have much money, but I saw it took some to kind of get it past the finish line. So I didn't do it. And then, and even before my first product that came out that was commercial success was the Tour Striker Training Club with the goofy face, that one.
I remember, yeah.
And,
It's great one.
So that one, but that came out, I was probably 10, how long ago was that? 11, 12 years ago. So that gave me a little bit of cushion as far as, I don't need this steady paycheck. I can, if I want to teach now, I can go teach because I have this other, source of income. Now, my whole thing is teaching. Like I like teaching tour players. I mean, I don't dislike it, and I do teach. I taught some and I enjoyed the experience. I enjoyed the experience of a tour player just for the athlete to athlete relationship. Okay. They knew I had a bit of game. Obviously they're better than me, but I can still take a club and demonstrate, and I still have shots, that they have or may struggle with. And maybe it's not at 120 miles an hour, maybe it's 107 miles an hour, but I can still kind of hit a golf ball, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing was with a tour player, I didn't want to travel. Like, I still have a fairly young family, and there is like Nick Taylor is a good example, a Canadian kid who is a great college player. He had a great coach in Canada. He comes to Phoenix. He's playing the mini tour. He's struggling. Like he's not playing like well at all. And he's shooting around par on golf courses par is really 68, not 72, gotcha. Because the par fives are gettable and the weather's perfect. And if you don't shoot 68 every day, you're really shooting 4 over if you shoot 72.
Right.
So, his friend convinces him to come see me for a lesson. And it was a pretty easy lesson. He hit on TrackMan for me for a little bit. And I'm watching him, and the shape and the look of the swing was nice, and the ball was hit crisply and it was going. And I'm kind of looking at the numbers, and the launch was too low, and the hit down on his irons too much, and everything curved a bit too much. So I basically said to him, I go, here's what the best player's ball flight looks like in the world. Here's what yours looks like in the world. You want to compete with this guy, and then this is sort of how you got to make this ball flight change a little bit. It wasn't like subjective. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, well, I think. It was very like, hey, here you go.
Sure.
You want to hit it like Jason Day up in the air a little bit more. You got to hit it like Justin Rose up in the air a little bit more. Their ball doesn't curve as much on a reasonable hit. So, once I showed him like, here you are, here they are. Okay. So let's take some of this angle of attack out. Let's get some of the ball more up in the air. And so that wasn't me kind of changing his look a ton. It was, he did it all pretty intuitively, really.
Gotcha, yeah.
I just kind of pushed him down the road of where his ball flight had to be. And we worked together for a couple of years, and he won. Like, he got on tour and won right away, which was awesome. And then the thing was, like, there was no way I was going to, like, get on a plane on Sunday and go be on tour for 4 days and then come home for 3 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no way I was going to do that. And it was like, honestly, I'm lucky I don't have to. I've got a nice range, and I've got a great building, and I've got people that come for a vacation. So I get to like show up at work all day, which I love, and then come home. You know what I mean? And go to my daughter's dance practice or my son's hockey practice or whatever. So like traveling to me is like the last thing I want to do. And would it be nice to help some guy win some major or something like that? Yeah, it'd be great. But it's not on my list of priorities. You know what I mean?
It's funny though. You've probably like indirectly helped more guys win majors through the development of the products that you've made than you ever could have done directly. Do you get me?
Yeah, I know that's funny, but I appreciate that. Like all those, I always joke. Like everybody goes, "Man, you must be so smart." I go, "No, I'm lazy," because out of my laziness to not want to do more than I need to, like if somebody's like this, right, and they're hitting
Yeah.
shots and they're, I say, okay, hold the ball, and they go like this, right? I'm like, all right, so we just got past all me explaining so many things to you by you just not dropping the ball, and then, Justin Rose, for example, with the smart ball, which is hysterical. Roy, like he is working on his, good players go so hard at it. It's so easy for their arms to separate, and all of a sudden they lose some of their club face control. So when he got the smart ball, I mean, he got it even before Foley. So he found this thing before Sean Foley gave it to him,
No,
right? And then Foley's like, because Foley's a buddy of mine, Foley's like, what are you doing? He's like, no, this thing's helping me, man. And the next thing you know, it's a part of his routine with Foley, like every day. It's part of his, like, just to, work on this a little bit. And then all of a sudden it started popping up on tour ranges everywhere. And Donald, the reality is, I used to use the foam one with the wedges in it.
I have it, yeah.
Yeah, it's great, right?
So do I actually, yeah.
But it's like the thing would fall out. And so you could, as soon as you make kind of a full swing, the thing would fall out. And I got tired of picking the damn thing up. So the first one was, I had one of those and I had a lanyard from the PGA show and I just taped it on there and I'd put it on the student, and then now they had that foam one with a big PGA lanyard, taped on there. And then they could let it go and it would hang there, but it's still way too much. And then I thought, well, damn it, I'm going to make it light. And then next thing you know, I've got this inflatable ball with a string on it, right? And I'm thinking to myself, surely I can't patent this. This makes no sense. So I have an attorney buddy, because I've had to do some, work with trademark and patent stuff, and he patented the damn thing, right? Not that people don't copy it, because there's tons of copies out there, but it was just, the goal was a bit better mousetrap, a little bit lighter, something that wouldn't fall. And the next thing you know, I've got another product that's decent, right? The smart ball, and that thing will be, it'll be knocked off forever. But fortunately, I still sell a bunch of them. And no matter what level you are, a tour player or a brand new golfer, if you can manage your arms a bit, you're going to be better off, because then your wrist angles aren't wonky. I mean, there's, a lot of merit to it. And Josh did a video for me, I don't know, last month or so, kind of explaining it. That was great. Simple, right?
Very simple. Yeah. And one thing I don't know, when you have your schools over, the biggest issue I find is bringing the new swing to the course. The countless amount of people that we know that come over the top and come out to in quite aggressively and lose a lot of distance. I've using the Playmate. I've had a couple of people gain 30 yards with 7 irons, but the next step of bringing it to the course, it's obviously a lot more difficult for them. In the golf course I'm in, there's hills above your knees and a lot of variables come into play. How do you find bringing it to the course and getting a player to focus on what they need to hit the shots on the course?
See, that's great, because that comes right back to the routine. So, the whole thing, I used to do a lot of golf scores with Andrew Rice with Revolution Golf. And so we do 4 or 5 of these things a year. And he used an expression instead of practice swing called primer. And so again, like, to me, the big part, and this is like Vision 54, PN Leonard graded this. And more coaches are, understand that, behind a golf ball, like, you have a chance to prime a feeling, okay? So on a driving range, I know I can give anybody an 8-iron, and I know I can give anybody 30 golf balls, and they're going to hit one good one, right? They're going to have one really pleasing shot out of 30 probably. And maybe some people might have, 8 or 10 out of 30 that are pleasing. Some might have, Justin Rose might hit 30 out of 30 solid shots. He's that good, right? So the whole idea of priming is that you might have 40 full shots in a round of golf, okay? So if you're working on, say, your elbow separation or this sensation in the backswing, a practice swing, it has to have a purpose, and it doesn't have to be full speed. It can be something that is, mindful and slow. And if you watch Tiger in 2000 at Pebble Beach on YouTube, you'll see what I mean. And then he has a moment of, okay, that priming is over. And then he looks at his target, and he has a breath, and he walks in with his routine. He looks, he waggles, he looks, he waggles, he goes. So taking it to the golf course, I always tell people, I don't expect you to practice all day every day. I think that's ridiculous. Like people always say, I'm gonna hit a lot of balls. I'm gonna practice. I'm like, no, you're not. Don't fool yourself. But what you can do is you can learn to prime your change so that every time you have a shot, I call it saran wrap. Okay, you prime a feeling, and the primer might look like this. You might be just kind of going and pausing at P3 here for a second, and then swinging through. So that is one little layer of saran wrap. Then you have another shot that's 2 layers of saran wrap, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. And then pretty soon, this retracted scap and this trail arm that goes behind you now starts to look a little better. So say, for example, you do 10 rounds of committed priming practice events that only takes a second before you hit a shot, right? You've done 40 of those, 10 rounds, you've done 400. So that little piece of saran wrap that you can poke your finger through is now a thick, piece of habit you cannot stick a knife through, right? So by kind of understanding the value of priming, which is practice swings, and then how to take a breath, how to walk in. And I always say you're going to have one of 3 things going to happen. You're going to hit a good shot, a bad shot, or an indifferent shot. You got to be able to live with all 3, and that's all fine, right? But it's like prime it and then go through your routine and then accept it and do it again and then do it again, do it again. So, if you've got this funky move that gets the face in this perilous place that is unreliable, well, prime in a behavior that's going to help. And then you can play your way into better golf, more reliable golf by the brief moment prior to every shot and kind of going through it that way.
That's a nice one. Like, especially, well, you've got 2 pieces there. One, for your average amateur who's like, well, I don't have time to practice, so how can I like change a pattern? There you go. And then also I have a lot, like, you have a lot of like high level players who love to play more than they love to practice. We had a good conversation about this the other day. It's like, I hate to like take away that sense of play. I love players who are competitive and love to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, go play. But like, at least there's like using priming, putting it into your routine. There's a way you can still work in your pattern, but you can do it in the environment that you love to compete in.
Right.
And see that, and like, as you said, get 400 mindful reps in over the course of, a week's worth of play. So that's really, I've never thought of that analogy, but it's really, really good.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I tell people, if you prime properly, you're going to get way better, and enjoy golf. Now, can you separate yourself from the outcome, right? That's the hardest thing for people, to separate from the outcome for a moment, in order to, and you said earlier, see whatever the shot does. Maybe that shot's something they can use, in the future. But separating from the outcome for a moment is critical. That's the hardest thing to coach somebody, separating from the outcome.
Acceptance, like we had a bit of a conversation about this the other day, and you mentioned it there, is expectations and acceptance. They sit on like a seesaw, and the higher the expectation goes up, usually the lower the acceptance goes, and the higher the acceptance goes, the lower the expectation, and it's finding the balance between those 2. It's
really tough one to get the players to do.
Hugely tough, yeah. Hugely tough.
No, for sure. I think like people, like when I play with people, like I'll hit plenty of bad shots, and the bad shot outcome might be, maybe I hook it in the trees or block it in the trees or whatever, and then go find my ball and hopefully I can hit it again, and then I hit it by the green, I chip it up and I make a par, or I make a bogey, right? And the funny thing about it is I'm far more forgiving, even though I have a pretty good skill level, like a good player should. And I don't get angry with myself because I don't feel I deserve to get angry with myself. I often tell people that come to see me, I say, you don't deserve to get mad. You're not good enough to get mad. And they'll look at me kind of like, what do you, and now that I'm old and grumpy, I tell people that all the time. I go, you have no business getting mad. You're not good enough to get mad. You don't deserve to get mad. And they'll look at me and I said, I've practiced all my life Okay, I practiced really hard all my life, and I hit a lot of bad shots, and I don't get mad. And I just, if anybody deserves to get mad on this lesson tee, it's me. You're not good yet, and you don't deserve to be able to get mad. And they'll look at me like, what are you talking about, son? You know, they might be 65 or 70. Then I do it to poke fun at them, right? But it's like, yeah, and I'll say to them, you're not very good, and you don't deserve to get mad. So let's focus on, you know, positive things, you know, what we're working on here. And then when you miss, which you should miss a bunch, hopefully I'll take your misses and may narrow them down a little bit. But, you know, when you leave me, you still probably won't be very good. Let's be honest. You know, and they get a kick out of that, because people come to a golf school, or they come to some coach that they feel is like, oh, I'm going to see this Martin Chuck guy. You know, and Golf Magazine says he's good, and Golf Digest says he's really good. So therefore, when I go see him, I should be really good. No, you're still going to suck unless you make a decision to change your pattern, okay, of acceptance and process. It's not a crystal ball. You know, when people come to the golf school, I do have a Harry Potter magic wand. I literally have a Harry Potter magic wand. I got it in the UK at the Harry Potter experience by London somewhere. I took my kids to it. And I take it to the golf school. When everybody shows up, they all kind of take them, I show them, okay, here's the range, you know, obviously they can see the range, and here's the club fitting area, here's the studio, come on in the studio. They gather in the studio, I'll show them where the bathroom is, here's where the snacks are, here's where the water is. You know, you're welcome to come and go, blah, blah, blah. Okay, say, oh, here's my magic wand. And I say, here's my magic wand. I just made you all 15 years old. And they laugh, and they kind of look at me, and I say, and this is the reason why I made you 15 years old, because if you're 15 years old and I'm your coach, okay, and I'm 51, and I ask you, Mr. Successful Businessman, Mrs. Successful Businesswoman, to suffer through a change for 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour. I said, if you were 15 and you wanted to play on my golf team, and you wanted to make my golf team, which was a state provincial championship team, you would suffer, you would do whatever I said. Okay, because when I was 15, I had coaches, whether it was rugby, hockey, everything. If my coach said something, I did it. Now, I may have a question, but it wasn't a question. The question wasn't about, well, this is stupid, why are we doing it? The question was more about, well, I don't understand the technique, can you help me a little bit? But I'm going to do it. I'm going to give you 100% of my effort and attention, almost without question, okay? And so I tell them the story about being a coachable teenager. Not me, they were too. The problem is when they become older, now they feel like, well, that was uncomfortable, that can't be right, okay? And I say, no. You want to be good at something, you have to suffer in that something. You have to be okay suffering. And so I said, if you want to make my team, you got to suffer. And we're going to ask you to do things for 10 or 15, 20 minutes. And you may not find it comfortable. It might feel weird. It might feel weird hitting half shots. It might feel weird, you know, making a mild grip adjustment. It might feel weird putting a smart ball in your forearms and hitting little punch shots, or, you know, working on your backswing with a plane mate, or using whatever, the orange wedge or whatever training aids. I use a lot of other training aids too. And I'll say, frankly, if you find it weird and you don't like it, that's okay. There's a track over there, it's 400 meters, and you can go run a lap. And when you're done, come back, and then we'll talk about it again. And then they'll usually laugh, right? Because you imagine some wealthy 65-year-old running off because I sent them to run the track. Of course not. But they get a kick out of it, and they actually appreciate that the coach isn't patronizing them, you know, isn't just, you know, saying, oh, you're wonderful, you're wonderful. No, you're not very good, okay? You want to get very good? Then you'll suffer these changes. And then maybe you'll earn the ability to become better, right? And that's, being older is kind of fun, because I couldn't talk to somebody like that when I was 25.
And it's funny, like coming from, like, say, and I don't like the term, like, you know, like working with elite players, all that kind of stuff. But when I had the opportunity about 4 weeks ago to do like a session with the kids, like a kids team from a club in the west of Ireland, and they came up for the day. They were all like good little players, like maybe like 10, 11 handicaps, but they were only like 10, 11 years of age, you know. And we had them around the short game area, and I was getting to do all this funky stuff, and they loved it. But like I was like, right, hit it close with a really long backswing, hit it close with a really short backswing, hit it close with the ball way back, way forward, and they just tried everything, and their eyes lit up, and they did not care how bad it was. And then I was thinking, I was like, where do we lose that along the way? It's like, because then if I was to do that with like one of the better players, and I was like, okay, move the ball, to be like, oh my god, like, oh, sure, I can't hit it from there, like, and like that feels so uncomfortable, and that can't be right, and like you should, and I'm like, something happens along the way from when we're kids to when we get older. We lose that sense of like openness and being like, yeah, fuck it, I'll give it a go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a play. It's a playfulness, right? You know,
100%.
it's a skill development, playfulness. Like once that's lost, like once we stop playing, we really get old, right? But that skill development, being silly, that is something that, I try to interject a bit of that in every golf school. I explained Bubba Watson being Louis Oosthuizen, and I think it was 2011 Masters when he hooked it off 10 down on the right trees as the lefty went in and hit that snap hook sandwich.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
And I tell him, I go, the shot's not that hard. I go, it's actually a pretty, because when I explain relate like Phil Mickelson hitting off the pine straw or all these kind of cool shots, if I can explain that, if I can paint the picture of how it's applicable, right, the person kind of gets it. And I'll say, all right, well, here's a lesson in this. Here's a sand wedge. Well, it's got 56 degree. I think it was a 52 degree, hit it like 150 yards. Here's a 52 degree, right? Well, when I twist the face down, now it's really not 52 degrees. It's more like a 7-iron. And then I'm going to aim myself about 40 degrees this way. And then I'm going to hit the outside half of the ball, and this thing's going to ricochet like a boomerang. And so then I'll demonstrate, and they'll go, wow. I'll say, you all can do that. And it's amazing how closed-minded they are. Like, it's one thing for me to go, okay, here's the path, here's the face, right? Now that big deviation is going to create this big hook. And as soon as I aim them way to the right, and I want their face to be way to the left, they short circuit. They can't playfully mess with the wild variable that I'm creating for them. And then it's like they're like guppies coming out of the water turning into frogs. When there's 12 of them, right? You get like one or two, like, I got it. Then another guppy, I got it. And then progressively, it's like, oh shit, somebody on like 8 persons, like, I'm never gonna get it, right? And everybody's like having fun hitting snap hook sand wedges, right? And they realize, oh, if the club goes that way and the face is going this way, they can make a ball do something that on purpose.
Yeah.
I remember vividly when this assistant pro wasn't even my mentor, it was a guy who worked in the golf shop. I could tell you, I could walk you to the spot on the golf course where this young guy taught me this, right? I'll never forget. I hit this par 5, I hit the second shot into this cluster of trees, behind the cluster of trees. And I'm looking, I'm like, well, what do I do here? Punch out? He goes, no, watch this. You know what I mean? And I love that. Anytime somebody hit, watch this, right? And he hit this ropey hook around the trees. And I'm like, oh, how'd you do that? And so he showed me, and then, the game stopped right there because we emptied our bag and we just rope hooked sand wedges around this like pocket of trees toward the green. And damned if I don't use that shot. Like, that shot's so valuable. I may not have to hit it for a month, but then I might hit it twice in a round.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so somebody has to learn the playfulness and skill development of the craziness. Once you kind of get distally aware of big fade and a big hook, something shooting down the middle makes a bit more sense rather than just trying to hit everything straight, right? People don't understand golf's a geometry of an inclined circle towards something on the, and the target line's the devil to most people too, right? Because it's something they can stand over and look down at. I have a lot of fun teaching people how to hit it off of high tees, because when they're hitting off something up here, there's no target line in the air.
Okay.
Target line only sits on something you're looking down on. Up here, they just kind of circular smash one, right? And they're like, oh my God, I've never hit it so straight because I have these high tees that they can mash it off of. They miss all the time. And I don't even let them use their clubs because they'll bash in the heads, but I'll let them use some of my old clubs.
Right.
And here's something cool too about that. When a ball's on a high tee, nobody ever sets up to it like this. They always kind of go,
Yeah,
right?
give
They
yourself
kind of
space,
find
right?
a
Yeah.
radius,
Yeah.
and then they go, I'm like, wow, you know, and then and so now I'm like, yeah, see that? Check that. Now just tip that over a little bit, right? No, we're not going to stand here like all comfy and re-gripping it before they take it away. Because when the ball is up on a high tee, guess what they can't do? They can't do this either. They kind of put their hands on nicely. They figure out the radius, and they knock it off a high tee. And then I'm like, okay, tip that over. There you go. And so they're, you know, they might have a little bit of an epiphany there, right?
It's kind of like when we're kids, we think in coulds. Like, oh, I could play on tour. I could hit that shot.
Yeah.
I could hit over that tree. I could hit a draw. I could hit a fade. I could shoot 66. And then as we get older, we replace coulds with shoulds. I should hit it straight. I should be able to do this. I should. And it's like that cripples us, you know.
Right.
And it's funny. Like we spoke yesterday, we were like, some of the practice habits you see the best players in the world exhibit now is probably not the same practice habits that got them there. You know what I mean? Like, it
Yeah.
was probably that playfulness. It was probably going back in the trees and hitting fucking roping hooks with sand wedges that gave them the skill base that allows them to be one of the best players in the world, not standing, hitting 100 balls in a row, trying to hit a certain position. You know?
Right.
One of the best sessions myself and my friend had it just 9 years ago, whatever. It was late in the evening, and we went out to the golf course and we were playing a few holes, and we were in a 70 yards away from a flag in the bunker. And I hit it. Well, I was in it. I hit it. I duffed it 50 yards. Never didn't get to the green. And we just stood there. The game ended. We stood there for probably 2 hours hitting balls out of that bunker. Got to the stage where one of us was staying down at the green, seeing how far we could hit it down the green to spin it back up to the flag. And ever since then, it was one of the best sessions I ever had. It was nothing to do with anything. It was just trying to hit a shot that I couldn't do, and I really enjoyed it. To this day, I was only chatting to my friend about it yesterday. He said, like, we have to do that again. Just stand out there for 2 hours, hitting a long bunker shot and trying to spin it. And when we did it, we were like, this is unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
brilliant.
No, for sure. It's
The playfulness in the sport, definitely, a lot of people lose that as they get older.
yeah, you know, and I think I blame, like when I was a kid, you know, and you guys are younger than me, but the driving range has helped us make a living. But it's also when I had to shag my own golf balls, like when I had to hit them and go get them, there's a lot of power in going to get what you hit, right? Like, you know, if you have a bag of balls and you got, like when I went to Florida, I moved to Orlando to play the mini tour in 1992. And there are tons of good players down there, really competitive. And it was expensive to go hit balls on a range somewhere. It was expensive. So I didn't have a lot of money. So I found a soccer pitch, and it was like, you know, way behind some school, and nobody was there. And I, you know, until somebody chased me off, I could go hit balls there. And I'd go, and it was mown pretty well, and I'd go find an area, like I'd kind of hit out of my own divots kind of thing, because it was tight, because it was Bermuda gnarly grass. So I find that, you know, kind of a deadish spot where the lies were tight, hit my own balls. Well, the grass was kind of longish where I was hitting them, and if I hit them if I hooked them or pushed them, finding them was miserable, right? But I remember as a kid hitting my own balls in the park. So I'd start off with 20 balls, and I'd be so mad if I couldn't find my 20 balls when I walked down there and get the balls, right? So, you know, I'd hit them with intent on where they were going, number one, and then two, I had to go get the balls, right? So now on a driving range, most people stand up on the driving range and they're just trying to knock the feathers out of the thing in most cases. And I think there's some good that's come of that. The game's changed. It's a power game now. When I grew up, the power was important, but it wasn't like if you hit it 250 when I was, 16, that was far. If you don't hit it, if you're 16 and you can't hit it 300 yards now in competitive golf, you don't hit it anywhere, right? You better be the best chipper and putter, and you're going to get run over by the guy who hits it 300, and he's a great chipper and putter. So, this game it's weird how the modern ranges have created these beasts, and then technology too, with like launch conditions. Guys of every size and shape move the golf club really fast, but there's something lost with, hitting your own balls, going to get your own balls, right? And I don't know where I'm going with that, but there's like the modern range has helped develop this, this full on rip where back when I was a kid growing up, I don't know if it was technology or maybe that wasn't our goal. But nowadays, kids all know that there's a benchmark of speed that they sort of have to get to in order to be competitive at a reasonable level. And it's always in the back of their mind, so I don't know where
It's
I'm going
funny
with
though
that.
how like if we nearly come full circle with where you started, is like I suppose the next breakthrough or the next game changer. Like Tiger back then, when we think of him, he had the length, but he also had this like unbelievable skill base, which is like his ability to shape it, hit different shots, and like he had a seemingly unlimited array of shots that he could with his irons. But he also had the distance, and I think the next guy to come through will also probably fit that mold where they might have the driving range skills of absolutely hammering it, but hopefully somewhere in their development they would have somebody who guided them enough to be like, okay, well, that's one thing, but we also need this other piece, which is the shot making.
Right. Yeah, good point. You're right. Tiger was, pre-launch monitor. And I'll never forget, I graduated New Mexico State and I was a couple years into post college, and I still kept in touch with a coach and a couple of kids on the team that I played on hadn't graduated yet. And Tiger had went to Stanford, and we played against Stanford all the time. And I remember asking the coach, I said, so, we got paired with Stanford, and the first tournament of the year was, I was already graduated, but New Mexico State played with Stanford. And I said, I go, so how was Tiger? And oddly enough, he played with this kid on our team who was named Todd Pinio. And Todd was a very good player from Arkansas, but he was Todd was maybe 5'4", a little guy, strong guy, but maybe Todd, and he was a great ball striker, but I swear he hit it 250, maybe 260 tops. Okay. And, maybe, and not to say that I hit it much farther than that in college, but I probably hit it 280. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I hit it longer now at 50 with my gear and the ball and stuff like that. But I said to him, what was it like playing with Tiger? He goes, he hit it 100 yards past Todd on every hole that allowed him to hit it 100 yards past Todd. I'm like, what? Excuse me? He goes, he hit it up, and he repeated himself. He said, and he went through the course. He said, this hole, yeah. He goes, he hit it 100 past Todd. Like, what? Like, it's at elevation in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm like, he hit it 350. He goes, yeah, he hit 7-iron into number 6. He hit both. And I'm thinking, wait a minute here. I wasn't short in college, and I could hit, and I had to hit like 3-wood onto that hole. You know what I mean? Like driver wood. And he goes, no, he hit 7-iron on the green for his second shot. He hit, this hole, yeah, he drove that hole. This hole, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what? Like, it didn't even comprehend like what he was telling me. Like, I watched him in the U.S. amateur, on TV and stuff. But until he played a course I was familiar with, what he did, and then where he hit it relative to a kid I played with, it was like, okay, here's a kid who hits it in play in a mile past a guy who hits it really well in play, but obviously not far. And it that was the thing that blew my mind. And to your point, Donald, about you're exactly right, is that kids are super motivated by speed now, but they aren't doing the 9 ball flight kind of stuff Tiger did
100%.
prior to, like, Tiger probably just had innate speed, right?
Yeah.
Flexibility, strength, coordination that was surpassed most kids. Now most kids realize, okay, I need this speed to compete because that's a big part of the game. But then the creativity with the irons, that's something that my generation did a lot of because that was fun.
Yeah, and it's like Tiger came along and he was like, all of a sudden, here's this guy, as you said, with this innate speed. He hits it 100 past like these other guys. But in addition to that, he's also the best iron player. And then it's kind of like no wonder he changed the game to the level he did, because now you've got guys that, they have a lot of the speed, but like maybe Rory on his day with his iron split, but there's not many players that would jump out in my mind that would have the ability to hit the array of iron shots that Tiger did through his peak, like where it just seemed like he was hole high all day long. He hit his number every single shot, you know. And that, like, I think even when you think of that alone, that ability to have that immense speed and then be able to have like enough of a dial on it to hit your number every time was another phenomenal piece that's probably a little bit underestimated when you look back at Tiger's career, you know.
You know, it's a story about, you know, speed, how I coach. It's interesting that like everybody feels like they have one speed, like the club golfers that come to my golf school. So a funny story, years ago, it would have been about 2013. Nick Taylor wasn't on tour yet. He was on the whatever the tour was called, buy.com then, I forget, Nationwide. I can't remember the name of the tour then, prior to the PGA Tour. He got his card to play that tour. Anyway, he's practicing on the range. My group of 12 people is kind of huddled by my tent. I'm having a discussion about something. And I whistle, like, oh, Nick, come here. And he kind of looks over like, you know, he's looking at me like, what? Like, come here. You know, he comes over. I go, Nick, what iron do you have? He's like, I got a 6 iron. And I said, Nick, hit 6 iron on that green. And the green's like 90 yards away. Okay, the target greens go like 90, 130, probably 170, 210, 230 or something, okay? So I said, Nick, hit one on that green. He goes, and he looks at me, he goes, stop it on the green or just land it on the green? I go, just land it on the green, just let it roll over, you know, so low flighted, 90-yard flat shot, doink on the green and over. Hit one on that green, Nick, and, you know, just let it touch the green, you know, flat flight, lands on the green. So with his 6 iron, one shot, no, you know, in front of 12 people and the coaches, no big deal, right? Because he doesn't care. If he misses, he doesn't care, right? But he takes the club and hits this shot. And he gets all the way up to, you know, he can muster one almost to 210. And so there, and I said to the group, I said, so next, most club golfers have one speed. You know, they swing this thing at one speed. I go, right? You got to learn how to have a variety of speeds. You know, I said, this 6 iron isn't just a 175 club or whatever it is your speed might comfortably max it out at, right, or a 130 club or a 115 club. It's a variety of yardages. And you've got to learn how to swing the weight of that thing and correspondingly know how the ball is going to react and the trajectories it's going to go, right? And so I do that all the time with people. And then this year, I don't know if you saw, there was a great post on Instagram, John Rahm. Did you see that? So John Rahm, like, check it out. I think it's on TaylorMade's feed or maybe John Rahm's feed. It's amazing. So John Rahm's got a 7 iron, okay? And he's hitting 7 iron. Somebody says, okay, John, and it's on a track, man. He goes, okay, John, hit it 93 yards. And John hits it like 95 yards. Okay, John, hit it 120. John hits it like 119. Now John's like, now it's a game. And you can see he is like into it. Okay, and then the guy's like, okay, 132, 135, 140, and he hits his number like a couple times. All right, John, max 7 iron. You know, I think it was like 205. You know, so it was so fun to see he sparked up when this guy started giving him numbers, and all of a sudden you can see up here it's grinding, right? And he's like feeling speed, and you know, he's hitting these shots. This ball is like landing within a towel of what the guy asked him to land it in, right? And so we do that to our club golfer. They're so busy trying to, you know, keep their head down and whap at it, right? They don't have any idea how to nicely put a speed on it. So there's so much development happens from just doing that, hitting numbers. You know, even if your max 6 iron's 120, well, you should be able to, you know, hit a flat 140, a flat 150, a little slightly higher one as speed increases. You know, I always say, like, why does Tiger hit it higher than me? You know, people are like, I don't know, because he's way faster than me. Not because he, you know, I mean, for my speed, it goes how it should go.
Correct.
You know, he hits it higher than me because he's, you know, a lot faster. He swings a 7 iron 100 miles an hour. I swing a 7 iron 85 miles an hour. You know.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Marin, thanks for the chat. You're an absolute genius.
Thanks, Mark. Really enjoyed it.
Really enjoyed it. Hope you have a good day and you get out of your house pretty soon. I'm going out now to have a walk in the sun.
Martin,
There
do
you
me
go,
a favor. Do me
Yeah.
a favor, right? Just be a little bit less grumpy today. Put a smile on your face. Go out there and be a little bit less grumpy.
All right, we'll do. Thanks, fellas.
All right,
Thanks
dude.
for
Talk to you
everything,
later.
man. Have a good one.
All
Cheers,
the
Josh.
best.
See ya.
See you, Donald.
Bye.